There is a valley in Lebanon, wide and green and impossibly fertile, cradled between two mountain ranges that run like parallel spines along the length of the country. The Beqaa Valley. It lies roughly midway between Beirut on the coast and Damascus to the east, a broad, flat expanse of farmland and orchards and vineyards, with the Lebanon mountains rising to the west and the anti-Lebanon range rising to the east. The valley floor sits nearly 1,000 meters above sea level. The air is dry. The light is golden, and the soil, the deep, red-brown, ancient soil, has been feeding civilizations for longer than almost any other place on Earth. You are there now. It is evening. The sun has dropped behind the western mountains, the Lebanon range, and the sky above you is turning from gold to copper to a deep, luminous violet that seems to pulse with warmth. The light that remains is not direct. It is reflected, bounced between the mountain walls, softened and diffused until everything it touches seems to glow from within. The terraced hillsides, the groves of walnut and apricot, the low stone walls that divide field from field. The red earth of the valley floor itself, everything glowing, everything warm, everything bathed in the last, slow, generous light of a Lebanese evening. The air smells of dust and warm stone and something sweet, something floral, the scent of jasmine perhaps, or wild thyme growing in the cracks between the ancient blocks. The Beqaa Valley has always been perfumed. It has always been generous. The Romans called it the breadbasket of Rome. The Phoenicians before them knew it as a place of plenty. The soil here is volcanic in origin, carried down from the mountains over millennia by rivers and rain. And it holds moisture and nutrients with a tenacity that makes almost anything grow. Wheat, barley, grapes, olives. The valley has fed empire after empire, and the empires have come and gone, and the valley remains patient, abundant, unchanged. And in the center of this valley, rising from the flat agricultural plain like a fever dream, like something that cannot possibly be real, are the ruins. You see them now, even from a distance, even in the fading light. 6 columns, 6 enormous columns, standing in a row against the darkening sky. They are the color of warm honey. They are impossibly tall. Each one is nearly 20 meters high, with a diameter of more than 2 meters at the base. They are topped by an entablature, a massive horizontal lintel of carved stone that connects them and gives them the appearance of a fragment of something much larger, which is exactly what they are. These 6 columns are all that remains of the greatest temple the Roman Empire ever built, the Temple of Jupiter at Baalbek. Once, there were 54 of these columns, 54 standing in rows, supporting a roof, enclosing a space so vast that it beggared the imagination of every traveler who saw it. Now there are 6 out of 54, standing in the twilight like the last teeth in an ancient jaw, holding up a fragment of lintel that leads to nothing, supporting a roof that no longer exists, framing a doorway to the sky. And yet, those 6 columns are among the most magnificent things that human hands have ever raised. They stand there with a dignity that is almost unbearable, a composure, a calm. They have watched empires rise and fall. They have survived earthquakes that leveled cities. They have endured the quarrying of their neighbors, column after column pulled down and carted away to build churches and mosques and fortifications. They have been struck by lightning, shaken by war, neglected for centuries, and still they stand. Still vertical, still perfect, still catching the last light of the day and turning it to gold. Walk towards them, take your time. The path leads through fields of dry grass and scattered wildflowers, across a landscape that has been inhabited continuously for at least 9,000 years. Beneath your feet, beneath the thin soil of the valley floor, There are layers of civilization stacked like pages in a book. Neolithic settlements, Bronze Age villages, Phoenician shrines, Roman foundations, Byzantine churches, Islamic fortifications, Ottoman houses, each layer built upon the last. Each generation raising its world on the ruins of the one before. The ground you walk on is not merely ground. It is a library, a compressed archive of human history, written not in words, but in pottery fragments and foundation stones, and the slow, steady accumulation of dust. The columns grow as you approach. They do not merely become larger. They become more present, more insistent. They fill more and more of your visual field until they are all you can see. 6 great pillars of honey-colored limestone rising against the violet sky, their fluted surfaces catching the last amber light, their capitals carved with acanthus leaves that seem almost to flutter in the evening breeze. Corinthian Capitals, the most elaborate of the classical orders. Each one carved from a single block of stone, each one a masterwork of sculptural precision, each one weighing more than 60 tons. 60 tons, a single capital, lifted 20 meters into the air and placed with such precision that it has not shifted in nearly 2,000 years. Think about that for a moment. Let it settle in your mind like the evening settling over the valley. 60 tons, 20 meters, 2,000 years. The numbers are almost meaningless. They are too large for the mind to grasp. They exist in a realm beyond everyday comprehension, a realm where engineering becomes something closer to sorcery, where the practical and the miraculous overlap and blur until you cannot tell where one ends and the other begins. And yet someone did this. Someone designed these columns, someone quarried the stone, someone transporting it, someone carved it, someone lifted it, someone placed it. Human beings, with human muscles and human ingenuity and human determination, raised these stones to the sky. The question is how. The question is always how. But before we reach for answers, let us simply be here, in this place, in this light, with these columns rising above us like the trunks of stone trees in a petrified forest. The stone is warm to the touch. You reach out and press your palm against the surface of one of the columns. The limestone is not smooth. It has a grain, a texture, like very fine sandpaper worn almost soft with age. You can feel the fluting beneath your hand, the shallow grooves that run vertically from base to capital, each one a channel carved by a chisel 2,000 years ago. Your fingers trace the groove, downward, following the line that some unknown carver cut into the stone when the Roman Empire was at its zenith, when this valley was part of the most powerful civilization the world had ever known. Your hand is touching the same surface that his chisel touched. The connection is physical, direct, undeniable. 2,000 years collapse into the width of a fingertip. The stone holds the heat of the day. It radiates warmth against your palm the way a living body radiates warmth. The column is not alive, but it is not entirely dead either. It is somewhere in between, somewhere in that liminal space where the mineral and the magical overlap, where rock becomes monument, becomes memory, becomes myth. The column is all of these things, and standing here, with your hand pressed against its warm, rough surface, you are all of these things too. You are tourist and pilgrim and dreamer and sleeper. You are here and not here, present and drifting, awake and almost not. Let yourself settle now. Feel the weight of your body against the mattress. Feel the pillow cradling your head. The evening is warm in the Beqaa Valley, warm and still and fragrant with jasmine and thyme, and there is nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to do, no messages to answer, no obligations to fulfill. just this place, this story, these ancient, golden, impossible columns standing against the darkening sky. Breathe in slowly. Feel the warm, dry, herb-scented air fill your lungs. Breathe out gently. Feel your shoulders soften. Feel the small muscles around your eyes relax. Feel the day fall away from you like dust falling from an old stone, dissolving into the quiet, leaving only warmth and stillness and the slow, deep comfort of a story about to begin. To understand Baalbek, you must first understand where it stands, not merely in the Beqaa Valley, not merely in Lebanon, but at a crossroads, one of the oldest and most contested crossroads in human history. Lebanon is a small country, tiny, really, a narrow strip of land on the eastern shore of the Mediterranean, barely 200 kilometers from north to south, and in places less than 50 kilometers from the coast to the Syrian border. It is roughly the size of a large English county, and yet within this small space, this slender ribbon of coast and mountain and valley, an extraordinary number of civilizations have risen and fallen and left their mark. The Phoenicians were here first, or at least, they were the first to make themselves known to the wider world. From their coastal cities of Byblos and Tyre and Sidon, they sailed the Mediterranean and beyond. They reached the Atlantic. They circumnavigated Africa. They established colonies across the ancient world, Carthage in North Africa being the most famous. And they gave the world something more lasting than any empire. They gave us the alphabet, the Phoenician alphabet. 22 consonants, no vowels, was the ancestor of Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Arabic, and virtually every other writing system used in Europe and the Middle East today. Every letter you read, every word you write, every text, message and email and novel and poem, all of it traces back to the Phoenician coast, to this small, impossibly consequential strip of land. After the Phoenicians came the Assyrians, then the Babylonians, then the Persians, then Alexander the Great and his Macedonian armies, then the Ptolemies of Egypt, then the Seleucids of Syria, and then, in 64 BC, the Romans. Each power brought its own gods, its own architecture, its own way of understanding the world, and each left something behind when it departed, a layer of pottery, a foundation wall, a name carved in stone. The land accumulated these traces the way a riverbed accumulates sediment, slowly, steadily, building up a record that archaeologists have been reading for centuries and have not yet finished. And through it all, through all these empires and their risings and their fallings, the valley endured. The Beqaa, broad and fertile and patient, watered by the Litani River, the longest river in Lebanon, fed by snowmelt from the mountains on either side. The valley was the prize. The reason empires fought over this small country, the breadbasket, the source, the place where the soil was deep and the water was reliable and the crops grew tall and abundant year after year after year. And in the heart of this valley, on a low hill, a tell, an artificial mound built up over millennia by the accumulated debris of successive settlements, there was a sacred place, a place where gods were worshipped, a place where the boundary between the human world and the divine world was believed to be especially thin. The Phoenicians called it something we are not entirely sure of. The name Baalbek itself gives us a clue. Baal, the great Semitic deity, the storm god, the Lord of Heaven, and Bek, or Beqaa, which may refer to the valley itself. Baal of the Beqaa, Lord of the Valley. It was a place dedicated to the most powerful god in the Phoenician pantheon, a god of thunder and lightning and rain, a god who controlled the weather and therefore controlled the harvest and therefore controlled life itself. The Phoenicians built a temple here. We know almost nothing about what it looked like. The Romans buried it beneath their own constructions, but fragments have been found, bits of carved stone, pottery, small bronze figurines of Baal and his consort Astarte, enough to confirm that this tell, this low artificial hill in the center of the Beqaa Valley, was sacred ground long before Rome existed, long before Greece existed, long before the classical world had even begun to stir. The worship at the tell was ancient, even by ancient standards. Archaeological evidence suggests that offerings were being made here as early as the 3rd millennium BC, 5,000 years ago, long before the Phoenicians had developed their alphabet, long before they had launched their ships across the Mediterranean. The tell was sacred in the Bronze Age. It may have been sacred in the Stone Age. The roots of Baalbek's holiness reached down into the bedrock of human civilization itself. To a time when gods did not yet have names, when worship was a feeling more than a ritual, when the sacred was simply a place where the air felt different, where the ground seemed to hum with a frequency that the body recognized even if the mind could not explain. The Phoenician worship of Baal at this site was elaborate and intense. Baal was not a gentle god. He was a god of storms, of violence, of the raw, unbridled power of nature. His worship involved animal sacrifice, the blood of bulls and rams poured over stone altars, the smoke of burnt offerings rising into the sky. The Phoenicians believed that the fertility of the valley depended on Baal's favor. If he was pleased, the rains would come, the crops would grow, the flocks would multiply. If he was displeased, drought, famine, death. The stakes were absolute, and the worship matched them. The tell at Baalbek was not a place of quiet contemplation. It was a place of blood and fire and desperate, passionate, life-or-death petition. Beside Baal, the Phoenicians worshipped Astarte, his consort, the goddess of love and fertility, and a third deity, a youthful god who died and was reborn each year, a god whose annual death and resurrection mirrored the cycle of the seasons. The Greeks would later identify this god with Adonis. The Romans would identify him with Mercury or perhaps with the young Bacchus. But his Phoenician name and nature are largely lost to us. He was a god of the growing things. A god of the vine and the grain and the spring rain. A god who died in the heat of summer and returned in the cool of autumn. His story was the story of the valley itself, the eternal cycle of growth and harvest and dormancy and renewal that has sustained the Beqaa for millennia. The sacredness of a place is stubborn. It endures longer than the gods themselves. The Phoenicians worshipped Baal here. The Greeks who came after them identified Baal with their own sun god Helios and called the place Heliopolis, city of the sun. The Romans who followed the Greeks identified Helios with their own Jupiter, the king of the gods, and began to build. And what they built was the most extravagant temple complex in the entire Roman Empire. Let the history settle around you. Let it be a blanket, soft and warm and unhurried. There is no examination at the end, no facts you need to retain, just names and dates drifting through the dark like dust motes in a beam of light, present for a moment and then gone, and then present again. Let them come and go as they please. Your breathing is steady now, your body is warm, the muscles of your jaw are unclenched, your tongue rests softly behind your teeth, your hands are open, resting on the covers, or tucked close to your body, wherever they are most comfortable. You are not holding on to anything, you are not gripping anything, you are soft and still and warm. And the story continues, the way a river continues, finding its way through the valley, always moving, always carrying you forward, towards sleep. The Roman period at Baalbek began in earnest around the 1st century BC. when the area became part of the Roman province of Syria. But the construction of the great temple complex was not the work of a single emperor or a single decade. It was a project that spanned roughly 250 years, generation after generation of builders, emperor after emperor providing funds and resources. The temples of Baalbek were not built, they accreted, they grew, layer upon layer. Column upon column, stone upon stone, like the tell beneath them, like the accumulated sediment of the valley floor. They were built up slowly, patiently, over centuries. The first structure to take shape was the Temple of Jupiter, and from the very beginning, the ambition was staggering. The Romans did not think small at Baalbek. They could not think small at Baalbek. The place itself demanded grandeur. The valley was vast. The mountains on either side were enormous. The sky above was wide and deep and overwhelmingly blue. Any temple built here had to match the landscape, had to hold its own against the scale of the natural world. A modest temple, a sensible temple, a temple of reasonable proportions, would have been swallowed by the valley, lost in the immensity of the setting. The Romans understood this. They understood that Baalbek required something extraordinary, something that would make the mountains themselves seem diminished, something that would force even Jupiter, the king of the gods, to look up. And so they built the largest temple in the history of their empire. But before they could build the temple, they had to build the platform, the foundation, the base upon which everything would rest. And it is here, in the foundation, that the deepest mystery of Baalbek begins. The platform is enormous. It covers an area of roughly 5 hectares, roughly the size of 10 football pitches laid side by side. It is raised above the surrounding terrain on massive retaining walls, walls that had to hold back the weight of everything that would be placed on top: the earth, the rubble fill, the paving stones, the courtyards, the temples themselves. The lower courses of these retaining walls are built from large but unremarkable stone blocks, blocks weighing perhaps 10 or 20 tons each, significant but manageable, the kind of stones that the Romans moved routinely in their construction projects across the empire. Nothing unusual, nothing inexplicable. But then, as the walls rise, the stones get bigger, much bigger. The change is gradual at first. The blocks in the middle courses of the wall weigh perhaps 50 tons, then 100, then 200, then 300. Each course uses fewer but larger stones. The engineering logic is sound. Larger stones mean fewer joints mean greater structural integrity, and the walls bear the greatest loads at the height, where the weight of the platform above presses most intensely against the retaining structure. But the progression from large to enormous to genuinely incomprehensible is unsettling. It suggests that whoever designed this wall was not merely capable of moving very large stones. They were determined to move the largest stones possible, as though size itself were part of the purpose, as though the foundations of the temple had to be not merely adequate but astonishing, not merely strong but impossible, not merely good engineering but a statement, a declaration. That the gods deserved foundations that no mortal power could match. At a height of roughly 7 meters above the ground, on the western side of the platform, there is a course of stones that has baffled engineers and archaeologists for centuries. It is called the Trilithon, 3 stones, 3 blocks of limestone, laid end to end in a single horizontal row. Each one is approximately 19 meters long, 4 meters high, 3.5 meters deep, and each one weighs approximately 800 tons. 800 tons per stone. Let that number settle. Do not try to comprehend it, just let it be there. 800 tons, the weight of roughly 500 family cars, the weight of a small ship placed in a wall, 7 meters above the ground, nearly 2,000 years ago, with no cranes, no hydraulic lifts, no powered machinery of any kind. 3 of them in a row, fitted together so precisely that you cannot slide a knife blade between them. The Trilithon stones are not the largest at Baalbek. They are merely the largest stones that were successfully placed in the wall. In the quarry, about 800 meters south of the temple complex, there are stones that are even bigger, stones that were quarried but never moved, stones that were cut from the bedrock, shaped and smoothed and made ready for transport, and then abandoned, left in the quarry, still attached to the mother rock at one end, waiting for a journey that never came. The most famous of these is the stone of the pregnant woman, Hajar el-Hibla in Arabic. The name may derive from the legend of a pregnant woman who tricked the people of Baalbek into believing she could move the stone if they fed her until she gave birth. Or it may simply refer to the stone's enormous, swollen appearance, like a belly heavy with child. The stone is roughly 20 meters long, 4 meters wide, 4 meters high, and it weighs approximately 1,000 tons. 1,000 tons, cut from the bedrock, shaped, smoothed, ready to go, and left. But even the stone of the pregnant woman is not the largest. In 2014, archaeologists from the German Archaeological Institute and the Lebanese University discovered an even larger stone in the same quarry. Lying beneath and beside the stone of the pregnant woman, partially buried, was a block that measured nearly 20 meters long, 6 meters wide, and roughly 6 meters high. Its estimated weight, 1,650 tons. The largest single stone block ever quarried in the ancient world, nearly twice the weight of the Trilithon stones, nearly 5 times the weight of the heaviest stone at Stonehenge, lying there in a Lebanese quarry, unfinished, undelivered, silent. It is called the Stone of the South, and it raises questions that no one has fully answered. Who quarried these stones? When were they quarried? Were they intended for the temple platform? If so, how on earth were they going to be moved? And why, having gone to the immense trouble of quarrying them, were they left behind? The theories are many, and none of them is entirely satisfactory. Some scholars believe the massive foundation stones, including the Trilithon, were placed by the Romans themselves. They point to tool marks on the stones that are consistent with Roman quarrying techniques. They note that the Romans were extraordinarily skilled engineers who moved enormous objects routinely, obelisks from Egypt, columns from quarries hundreds of kilometers away. The Romans had the organizational capacity and the engineering knowledge to attempt such a feat. Others are less certain. Some archaeologists have suggested that the massive foundation stones predate the Roman construction, that they were already in place when the Romans arrived, that the Romans built their temple on top of an existing platform, a platform constructed by an earlier civilization, perhaps the Phoenicians, perhaps someone older still. The evidence for this is circumstantial. The foundation stones are made from a different type of limestone than the upper courses of the wall. Their surfaces show different weathering patterns, and their sheer size is anomalous. Nothing else in the Roman architectural record comes close. The Romans moved large stones, yes, but 800 tons, 1,000 tons, these numbers are an order of magnitude beyond anything Rome attempted elsewhere. The quarry provides some clues. The bedrock from which the stones were cut is a megacrystalline limestone, a particularly hard and dense variety that outcrops in the hills south of the temple. The Romans quarried this same stone for the columns and blocks of the temples themselves. The quarrying technique involved cutting deep channels around the desired block, using iron wedges driven into the stone along carefully drilled lines, and then separating the block from the bedrock below by undercutting. The process was slow, labor-intensive, but well understood. The Romans did it all across their empire. But quarrying is one thing, moving is another. How do you transport an 800-ton stone block over a distance of 800 meters, on flat ground or nearly flat, but still 800 tons? The rollers would need to be enormous. The trackway would need to be immensely strong, capable of bearing concentrated loads that would crush ordinary road surfaces. The number of workers required to pull such a weight, even on rollers, even on a well-prepared surface, would be extraordinary. Some estimates suggest 10,000 men or more, pulling in unison, coordinated, fed and housed and managed for days or weeks at a time, inching the stone forward a few meters per day. The Romans had pulleys and cranes and capstans. They had treadmill cranes powered by men walking inside enormous wooden wheels. They had ramps and levers and sledges. They had an empire's worth of engineering expertise and an empire's worth of manpower. But even so, the logistics of moving the Trilithon stones are difficult to reconstruct with any confidence. Modern engineers who have studied the problem tend to agree that it was possible, just barely. At the extreme outer edge of what Roman technology could achieve, and that in itself is remarkable. These stones were not the routine product of Roman engineering. They were its apotheosis, its summit, its most audacious achievement. Or perhaps someone else moved them, someone whose methods we do not understand, someone who came before the Romans and left no record except the stones themselves, lying in the wall, impossible and unexplained, silent as the valley. There is another theory, one that appeals to the imagination even as it frustrates the evidence. Some researchers have noted that the Trilithon stones are placed at a very specific height in the wall, at the level where the greatest structural loads would concentrate. The stones are not decorative, they are not symbolic, they are functional, they bear weight. They distribute the immense forces generated by the temples and courtyards above them across the widest possible surface area. Whoever placed them understood engineering, understood load distribution, understood the mechanics of massive structures in a way that suggests long experience with such problems. And here is the deeper mystery. Why use such enormous stones at all? The Romans could have built a perfectly adequate retaining wall from smaller blocks. They did exactly that for the lower courses. Stone blocks of 10 or 20 tons, assembled in courses, mortared or dry-fitted, would have served the same structural purpose. The decision to use 800-ton monoliths was not a structural necessity. It was a choice. A deliberate decision to do something extraordinary when something ordinary would have sufficed. Why was it a demonstration of power, a statement of technological mastery intended to impress and intimidate? Was it a religious requirement, a belief that the foundation of a temple to the king of the gods must be composed of the largest stones humanly possible? Was it a competition, an ancient engineering race between rival cities or rival builders to see who could move the heaviest stone? We do not know. The builders left no explanation. They left only the stones. And the stones say nothing. They simply lie there, in the wall, in the quarry, enormous and patient and perfectly, maddeningly silent. Imagine the workers, not the architects who designed the temple complex, not the engineers who calculated the loads and planned the transport routes, not the priests who specified the dimensions and the orientations and the sacred proportions. The workers, the men whose names were never recorded, whose faces were never carved in stone, whose lives are invisible to history. They were local men, most likely, from the villages of the Beqaa Valley and the surrounding mountains. Some may have been slaves, some may have been conscripted laborers, fulfilling their obligations to the empire through physical work rather than military service. Some may have been free craftsmen, stonemasons and quarrymen who practiced their trade from generation to generation, father teaching son, the knowledge of stone passed down through families like an inheritance. They rose before dawn. They walked to the quarry or the construction site in the grey light of early morning, when the air was still cool and the mountains were silhouettes against the brightening sky. They ate bread and olives and drank water from leather skins. They picked up their tools, iron chisels and hammers and wedges and picks, and they began to work. The sound would have carried across the valley, the ring of iron on stone, a rhythm, a cadence, dozens of hammers striking in something close to unison, the way quarrymen have always worked, finding a rhythm that conserves energy and maximizes force. Tink, 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 the sound of stone being shaped, the sound of the temple being born, rising from the valley floor each morning with the sun and falling silent each evening with the dusk, year after year after year. Their hands would have been calloused, hard as the stone they worked, their shoulders and arms thick with muscle, their skin darkened by the sun. They would have known the stone intimately, its grain, its fracture planes, its moods and temperaments, where it would split cleanly, where it would resist, where a hidden flaw might cause a block to crack unexpectedly, ruining days of work in a single, sickening instant. They would have known these things the way a farmer knows soil, the way a sailor knows water. Through long acquaintance, through years of daily contact, through a relationship that was part craft and part conversation and part love. And when the day was done, when the light was gone and the hammers were silent, they would have walked home through the darkening valley, past the vineyards, past the orchards, past the fields of wheat and barley, back to their villages, their families, their small, ordinary, unrecorded lives, lives that made the temple possible, lives without which the columns would never have risen and the stones would never have been moved and the gods would never have had their house. Remember them tonight, not by name, for their names are lost, but by the work of their hands, which endures. The mystery is part of the magic. Let it be. Do not try to solve it tonight. Just let the questions float in the dark like stars, distant and beautiful and unanswerable. The stones are there. They have been there for a very long time, and they will be there long after all our theories have been forgotten. That is enough. That is more than enough. Breathe in the warm air of the Beqaa Valley, dust and time, and the faintest trace of wood, smoke from a village in the distance. Breathe out, let your body settle deeper into the mattress. Let the weight of the day drain from your limbs. Let the mystery of the stones hold you, not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a lullaby to be heard, something vast and ancient and quietly wonderful, something that does not require your understanding, only your presence. Upon this platform, upon these impossible foundation stones, the Romans built their masterpiece, the temple of Jupiter Heliopolis, Jupiter of Heliopolis, Jupiter of the City of the Sun. It was the largest temple in the entire Roman world. Nothing in Rome itself came close. Not the Temple of Jupiter on the Capitoline Hill, not the Pantheon, not the Temple of Venus and Roma. Baalbek was bigger than all of them. The temple measured roughly 88 meters long by 48 meters wide. It stood on a podium that raised it nearly 10 meters above the courtyard floor, and it was surrounded by a colonnade of 54 Corinthian columns, each one 20 meters tall. Each one carved from a single piece of granite quarried at Aswan in Egypt, transporting by ship down the Nile and across the Mediterranean to the Lebanese coast, and then hauled overland and up into the Beqaa Valley. Think about that journey, a single column weighing over 300 tons, cut from the granite quarries at Aswan, the same quarries that produced the obelisks of Egypt, transporting down the Nile on a barge across the open sea, unloaded at Berytus, modern Beirut, and then carried inland over the mountains, through the passes, down into the valley, and then raised, erected, placed on its base with a capital on top, a capital that alone weighed 60 tons, and aligned with its 53 companions to form a colonnade of breathtaking regularity and grace. The logistics are almost impossible to imagine. The supply chain stretched across thousands of kilometers. The project required the coordination of quarrymen in Egypt, shipwrights on the Nile, sailors on the Mediterranean, road builders in the mountains, engineers at the construction site, carvers and sculptors and masons and laborers, thousands of people working across vast distances towards a single shared goal. It was one of the most complex construction projects the ancient world ever attempted, and it took the better part of 2 centuries to complete. The temple itself was a peripteral design, meaning it was surrounded on all sides by columns, 10 columns across the front, 19 along each side. The columns formed a covered walkway, a peristyle, that encircled the building like a stone forest. Walking among them, looking up at the massive stone beams that span from capital to capital, you would have felt tiny, insignificant, deliberately so. The temple was designed to overwhelm, to make the human visitor feel the immensity of Jupiter's power by making them feel the immensity of his house. The interior, the cellar, was divided into chambers. The innermost chamber held the cult statue of Jupiter Heliopolis. We do not know exactly what it looked like. No image has survived, but sources describe it as a beardless figure clad in gold, holding a whip in one hand and a sheaf of grain in the other, not the familiar bearded Jupiter of Roman tradition. This was a hybrid deity, a fusion of Roman Jupiter and Phoenician Baal and Greek Helios. A god of the sun and the sky and the harvest, a local god elevated to imperial status, a god who belonged to this valley and to this land, even as the Romans claimed him for their own. The walls of the cellar were decorated with carved stone panels of extraordinary quality. Fragments survive: lions, eagles, garlands of fruit and flowers, winged victories, bulls. The iconography is rich and eclectic, drawing on Roman, Greek, and Near Eastern traditions in a blend that is uniquely Baalbek. This was not Rome transplanted to the provinces. This was something new, something that grew from the meeting of cultures at this ancient crossroads, something that could only have been born here. Where East met West, where Baal met Jupiter, where the Phoenician past and the Roman present merged and produced something neither could have created alone. But the temple of Jupiter was not the only marvel at Baalbek. It was the largest, but it was not the best preserved. That honor belongs to its neighbor. The Temple of Bacchus. It stands just to the south of the Temple of Jupiter, close enough to be part of the same complex, but separate enough to have its own identity, its own character, its own mood. And while the Temple of Jupiter was the grand statement, the imperial gesture, the shout of power and ambition, the Temple of Bacchus is something subtler, something finer, something that whispers where Jupiter roars. It is also the best preserved Roman temple of its size anywhere in the world, better preserved than anything in Rome, better preserved than any temple in Greece or North Africa or Asia Minor. The walls still stand to their full height. The columns, 42 of them, still rise in their original positions. The entablature is largely intact. The doorway, the most elaborate doorway in all of Roman architecture, still frames the entrance to the cellar. Walking into the Temple of Bacchus is as close as you will ever come to walking into a functioning Roman temple. It is a time machine in stone. Despite its name, the Temple of Bacchus may not actually have been dedicated to Bacchus. The identification is uncertain. Some scholars believe it was dedicated to Venus, or to a local deity, or to the young god of wine and ecstasy who was identified with the Phoenician deity Adonis. The name Bacchus stuck because of the vine and grape motifs found in the carved decorations. But the truth is that we are not entirely sure who was worshipped here. The god's name has been lost. Only the building remains. And what a building it is! The temple measures roughly 69 meters long by 36 meters wide. It would be a massive building by any standard, but standing next to the Temple of Jupiter, it appears almost modest, almost delicate. This is an illusion of scale. The Temple of Bacchus is in fact larger than the Parthenon in Athens, larger than virtually any temple in the classical world. It only appears small because its neighbor is so preposterously enormous. Context is everything at any other site. The Temple of Bacchus would be the undisputed star. At Baalbek, it is the supporting act, the opening band, the undercard, and yet, many visitors find it more beautiful than Jupiter's temple, more human, more approachable, more tender. The columns of the Temple of Bacchus are 15 meters tall, Corinthian like those of Jupiter's temple, but slightly shorter, slightly more slender. The proportions are different. Where Jupiter's columns convey raw power, Bacchus's columns convey elegance, grace, a sense of upward movement that lifts the eye towards the sky with an effortless verticality. The fluting is crisp and deep. The parallel grooves carved with a precision that catches the light and creates a subtle play of shadow on the surface of each column, giving it texture, giving it life, making the stone seem almost to breathe. Step through the great doorway. It is 9 meters tall, framed by pilasters and a lintel carved with images of eagles and victories and garlands, an arch of stone that rises above the opening like a frozen wave. The underside of the lintel is carved with a great eagle, wings outspread, talons gripping a caduceus, the symbol of Mercury. The carving is deep and confident. The eagle seems to burst from the stone. It has been there for nearly 2,000 years. And it still looks as though it might fly. Inside, the cellar stretches before you, 2 rows of Corinthian half columns, engaged columns that project from the walls, divide the interior into a central nave and 2 side aisles. The half columns are connected by an entablature that runs the length of the building, creating a rhythm of light and shadow. Column, space, column, space, column, space, that draws you forward towards the innermost sanctuary. The carved decoration is extraordinary. Every surface is worked. Niches framed by miniature pediments, shell-shaped conchs above the doorways, carved heads and figures and geometric patterns. The stone is alive with imagery: lions, bulls, maenads, the ecstatic female followers of Bacchus, their hair wild, their robes flowing, grapevines, poppy heads, stalks of wheat, the abundance of the valley expressed in stone, petrified fertility, a garden that will never wither. Look up, the ceiling is gone now, fallen or dismantled over the centuries, but the stone coffers that line the lower portions of the ceiling are still visible in places. Deeply carved panels with rosettes and geometric designs. When the ceiling was intact, when the temple was whole, this interior would have been a cave of carved stone, a grot of impossible richness. The light filtering through the doorway would have illuminated only the nearest details, leaving the rest in shadow, mysterious and inviting. Drawing the worshipper deeper into the darkness, deeper towards the god. At the far end of the cellar, the Adyton, the innermost sanctuary, a raised platform reached by a flight of steps. This was where the cult statue stood. This was the destination, the reason for the journey, the place where the boundary between the human world and the divine world was believed to be at its thinnest. Worshippers would not have entered the Adyton. That privilege belonged to the priests alone. Ordinary believers would have stood in the nave, looking up the steps towards the dimly visible figure of the god, separated from the divine by a few meters of stone and a vast, unbridgeable gulf of theology. The feeling of walking through the Temple of Bacchus today is unlike walking through any other ancient building. It is not merely the scale. Though the scale is extraordinary, it is the completeness. So much of the building survives: the walls, the columns, the doorway, the niches, the carved decoration. Enough remains to give you a genuine sense of the enclosed space, of what it felt like to be inside this building when it was whole. Most Roman temples survive only as foundations or a few scattered columns. The Temple of Bacchus survives as a room, a vast, roofless, time-ravaged room, but a room nonetheless. You can stand inside it and feel the walls around you and sense the proportions and understand, in your body, not just your mind, what the Romans achieved here. The understanding is physical, architectural, spatial. It bypasses the intellect and speaks directly to the sense of being enclosed, of being held, of being inside something. And there is something comforting in that, in being inside, in being surrounded by walls that have stood for nearly 2,000 years, in knowing that the stone around you is massive and permanent and utterly indifferent to the small, temporary anxieties of your life. The walls of the Temple of Bacchus do not care about your mortgage or your emails or the meeting you have tomorrow morning. They care about nothing. They are stone, they endure, and in their endurance, in their calm, mineral indifference, there is a kind of peace, a permission to let go, to stop worrying, to stop planning, to simply be here, in this ancient room, in this warm, dry, herb-scented air, and rest. The third temple at Baalbek is the smallest and the most unusual, the Temple of Venus, a circular temple, a tholos, standing a short distance to the east of the main complex. It is tiny compared to its neighbors, a jewel, a confection, a piece of architectural whimsy that seems to belong to a different world entirely. The temple is built on a horseshoe-shaped platform. Its columns curve outward in a concave arrangement, a design that is almost unique in Roman architecture. The stone is finely carved. The proportions are intimate. Walking around the Temple of Venus after visiting Jupiter and Bacchus is like picking up a pocket watch after examining a cathedral clock. The craftsmanship is no less impressive, but the scale is entirely different, and the effect is different too. Where Jupiter overwhelms and Bacchus enchants, Venus delights. It is a building that makes you smile. In the Byzantine period, the Temple of Venus was converted into a church dedicated to Saint Barbara. The Christians recognized the beauty of the building even as they rejected the god it honored. They kept the structure, they simply changed the tenant. This was a common practice throughout the Roman world. Temples became churches, columns were reused, sacred spaces were rededicated. The gods changed, but the stone remained. The choice of Saint Barbara is itself revealing. Barbara was a martyr, a young woman who defied her pagan father and was executed for her Christian faith. Her story was a rebuke to the old gods. Her church, built inside a temple that had celebrated physical love and fertility, was a deliberate inversion. Where Venus had presided over passion, Barbara now presided over chastity. Where incense had risen to honor the goddess of desire, prayers now rose to honor a virgin who had chosen death over compromise. The architecture endured. The meaning was entirely transformed. Today, the Temple of Venus stands largely restored. Its delicate columns, its unusual curved plan, its intimate human scale. Visitors often pause here longer than they expect. After the overwhelming monumentality of Jupiter and Bacchus, the Temple of Venus offers relief. It is a building you can comprehend, a building you can hold in your mind without strain, a building that whispers rather than shouts, and in the context of Baalbek, where everything is superlative, where every dimension is the largest or the heaviest or the tallest, that whisper is surprisingly powerful. Sometimes the quiet voice is the one you remember longest. Between the temples and the entrance to the complex, the Romans built two enormous courtyards. The first was the Hexagonal Court, an unusual six-sided enclosure, roughly 60 meters across, lined with columns and niches. It served as a transitional space, a decompression chamber, a place where the pilgrim could pause and prepare before entering the sacred precinct proper. Second was the Great Court, and it was truly great, one of the largest enclosed ritual spaces in the ancient world, roughly 135 meters long and 113 meters wide, surrounded on all sides by covered porticos, roofed colonnades supported by rows of columns, with exedri, semicircular recesses, at regular intervals along the walls. In the center of the court stood two enormous altars, one for burnt offerings, one for ritual ablutions. For the washing that preceded sacrifice, the altars were large enough to accommodate the sacrifice of entire herds of cattle. The smoke and the smell of roasting meat would have risen from this courtyard and spread across the valley, visible and olfactory proof that the gods were being honored. The Great Court was not merely a space, it was an experience. The pilgrim entered through a monumental propylaea, a grand entrance portico with 12 columns, ascended a broad staircase, crossed the hexagonal court, and then emerged into the Great Court. The transition from the narrow, enclosed hexagonal space into the vast openness of the Great Court would have been dramatic, theatrical, designed to astonish. And then, at the far end of the Great Court, rising above everything else, the Temple of Jupiter, the destination, the climax, the reason for the journey, 54 golden columns against the blue sky, the house of the god. Take another breath, a slow one. Let it fill you from the bottom of your lungs to the top, slowly, the way the valley fills with shadow as the evening deepens, and let it go. Feel the warmth of the exhaled air against your upper lip. Feel the gentle collapse of your chest. Feel the stillness that follows the breath, the moment of neither inhaling nor exhaling, the pause, the rest, the quiet center of the cycle. You are doing beautifully. Your body is settling. Your mind is quieting. The images of columns and courtyards and carved stone are drifting through your thoughts like clouds across a valley, present but undemanding, soft and shapeless and easily released. The construction of the temple complex at Baalbek was not a continuous process. It was episodic, fitful, dependent on the wealth and the priorities of successive emperors. The Temple of Jupiter was begun in the 1st century BC, possibly under Augustus, and was not completed until the middle of the 1st century AD, possibly under Nero. The Great Court was built during the reigns of Trajan and later emperors. The Temple of Bacchus was constructed during the 2nd century AD, probably under Antoninus Pius. The Temple of Venus came later still. The Hexagonal Court was among the last additions, built in the 3rd century AD. 250 years of construction, 10 or more generations of builders, entire lifetimes spent working on a project that the workers themselves would never see completed. A father would lay stones that his son would carve. A grandfather would begin a column that his grandson would raise. The temple complex was a multi-generational promise, a contract between the present and the future, an act of faith not merely in the gods, but in the continuity of civilization itself. In the belief that the empire would endure, that the funds would keep coming, that the stone would keep arriving, that the masons and the carvers and the engineers would keep being born and trained and deployed. It was a bet, and for 250 years, the bet paid off. Consider for a moment what it would have been like to visit Baalbek at its peak, in the 2nd or 3rd century AD, when the complex was complete or nearly so, when the temples gleamed with fresh-cut stone and the bronze roof tiles caught the sun and the cult statues stood in their chambers and the altars smoked with sacrifice. You would have approached from the east, along a road that ran straight through the valley floor, paved with stone, lined with tombs and monuments on either side. The road was a processional way, a sacred path. Walking it, you would have seen the temple complex growing before you, filling more and more of the sky, the columns and pediments and walls rising from the hilltop like a city within a city. The scale would have been overwhelming, even from a distance. Even before you reached the base of the great staircase. The staircase itself was enormous, broad and shallow-stepped, designed for crowds, for the slow, measured ascent of hundreds of pilgrims at once. The steps were worn smooth by sandaled feet. At the top, the propylaea, 12 towering columns framing the entrance like a stone forest. Beyond them, a vestibule, and beyond that, the hexagonal court, with its 6 sides and its columned niches and its careful, deliberate geometry, a space designed to slow you down, to prepare you, to shift your consciousness from the everyday world of the street to the sacred world of the temple. And then, the great court. You emerged from the relative confinement of the hexagonal court into an explosion of space and light. The court was vast, open to the sky, surrounded by towering colonnades. The 2 great altars stood in the center, one a tower altar rising 12 meters into the air, the other a ritual pool for purification. Smoke would have risen from the tower altar in a thick gray-white column, the smoke of burnt offerings, cattle and sheep and goats and doves. Their fat sizzling on the fire, their blood running in channels cut into the stone floor. The air would have been thick with the smell of roasting meat and incense and the sharp, metallic tang of blood. This was not a place of quiet meditation. This was a place of visceral, physical, overwhelming sensory engagement with the divine. Priests in white robes moved through the court. Musicians played flutes and cymbals and drums. Pilgrims crowded the porticos, some praying, some making offerings at smaller shrines set into the walls, some simply standing and staring at the temple of Jupiter that rose above the western end of the court like a cliff of carved stone. The noise, the color, the smell, the heat, the press of bodies, the weight of faith. It would have been one of the most intense religious experiences available in the ancient world. A pilgrimage to Baalbek was not a gentle affair. It was a full-body immersion in the power and presence of the gods. The acoustics of the temples deserve mention because they are remarkable. Sound behaves in unexpected ways among these massive stone structures. The great court, with its high surrounding walls and its hard stone surfaces, amplifies and reflects sound in ways that modern acoustic engineers find fascinating. A voice raised in the court carries with extraordinary clarity. The slap of sandals on paving stones echoes and multiplies. The bleating of a sacrificial animal would have been audible to every person in the enclosure. The design may have been intentional. The Romans were sophisticated builders who understood the behavior of sound in enclosed spaces. The amphitheaters and theaters they built across the empire demonstrate a mastery of acoustics that rivals anything achieved before the modern era. Inside the temples themselves, the effect is even more pronounced. The hard limestone walls and the enclosed space create a reverberant environment where every sound lingers, where a whispered prayer seems to hang in the air for a moment before dissipating, where the sound of a flute or a chanted hymn would have filled the cellar with a richness and a warmth that enhanced the sense of divine presence. The architecture did not merely house the god, it amplified him. It gave his silence a weight and his rituals a resonance that ordinary buildings could not provide. The decline of Baalbek began, as the decline of so many Roman things began, with the rise of Christianity. In 313 AD, the Emperor Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, granting religious tolerance throughout the empire and effectively ending the persecution of Christians. Within a generation, Christianity had become the dominant religion of the Roman world. The old gods were fading. The old temples were losing their congregations. The sacrifices were dwindling. The smoke was clearing from the altars of the great court. Constantine himself took an interest in Baalbek. The Christian sources tell us that he was scandalized by the temple of Venus, which he associated with sacred prostitution and other practices that the new faith found abhorrent. He ordered the construction of a basilica, a Christian church, on the site. The temple complex was not destroyed, not immediately. The stone was too valuable, the site was too prominent, but its function was changed. The temples were closed. The cult statues were removed. The great spaces that had been built to honor Jupiter and Bacchus and Venus were repurposed for the worship of Christ. The transformation was gradual through the 4th and 5th centuries as the Roman Empire fractured and the western half collapsed. Baalbek remained part of the Eastern Empire. The Byzantine Empire, Christian, Greek-speaking, administratively complex. The temples were systematically stripped of their portable treasures. The bronze roof tiles were removed. The gold and silver fittings were melted down. The cult statues were destroyed or carried away. But the stone remained. The columns remained. The walls remained. Too massive to demolish, too useful to ignore. A Christian basilica was built in the Great Court, using columns and blocks scavenged from the surrounding temples. The basilica was a substantial building in its own right, but it was dwarfed by the structures around it. A Christian church surrounded by pagan temples, a new faith inhabiting the ruins of the old. The architectural conversation between the two religions is still visible in the ruins today. You can see the smaller, cruder later stones of the basilica sitting awkwardly among the massive, perfectly finished blocks of the Roman complex. The contrast is stark and poignant. The world had changed, the gods had changed, but the stones endured. Then came the earthquakes. Baalbek lies in a seismically active region. The Great Rift Valley, the geological fault line that runs from East Africa through the Red Sea and up through the Jordan Valley and into Lebanon, passes close by. The earth here is restless. It has always been restless, and every few centuries, it reminds the people who live here that the ground beneath their feet is not as solid as it seems. In 551 AD, a massive earthquake struck the eastern Mediterranean. Its epicenter was off the coast of Lebanon. The damage was catastrophic. Cities along the coast were destroyed. Tsunamis battered the shoreline, and at Baalbek, columns fell, walls cracked. Massive blocks of stone were shaken from their positions and tumbled to the ground. The Temple of Jupiter, already weakened by the removal of its bronze fittings and the neglect of its structure, suffered terribly. Columns toppled like felled trees. The great entablature crashed down. The cellar collapsed inward. It was the beginning of a long, slow unraveling that would continue for centuries. The earthquake of 551 was the most devastating single event in Baalbek's history, but it was not the last. The earth shook again in the 7th century, and in the 8th, each tremor knocked a few more blocks from their positions. Each one weakened the structures a little further. The temples that had been designed to stand forever were being dismantled by the very ground they stood upon. The irony is almost too cruel to contemplate. The builders had chosen the finest stone, the most massive foundations, the most precise joinery. They had done everything in their power to make these buildings permanent, and the earth itself. The deep, restless, fall-trodden earth of the Levant was undoing their work. Slowly, inevitably, earthquake by earthquake, century by century. Further earthquakes followed in 1170, in 1202, in 1759. Each one took its toll. Each one brought down another column, cracked another wall, shattered another lintel. The 6 columns that remain standing today are the survivors of these repeated assaults, the lucky ones, the ones that happen to be in the right place, with the right foundations, aligned in the right direction. Every other column fell, and the fallen columns lie where they dropped. Enormous stone cylinders scattered across the site like discarded building blocks, each drum weighing 20 or 30 tons, tumbled and cracked and half buried in the earth. The Islamic conquest of the region in the 7th century brought further changes. The Umayyad caliphs recognized the strategic value of Baalbek's massive platform. They fortified it. They built walls and towers using stones scavenged from the temples. The sacred precinct became a military installation. A citadel, the great court, once filled with altars and sacrificial smoke, became a fortified enclosure. The temples, once open to the sky and the gods, were incorporated into defensive walls. The transformation was practical and unsentimental. The Muslims had no use for pagan temples, but they had great use for enormous blocks of well-cut stone. The Abbasid caliphs continued the fortification. The Crusaders passed through during the 12th century, leaving little mark. Saladin's forces controlled the site. The Ayyubids and then the Mamluks strengthened the defenses further. A mosque was built within the complex. Residential quarters were constructed against the ancient walls. The site accumulated layer upon layer of Islamic architecture, each generation adding its own modifications, each one using and reusing the Roman stones. The medieval Arab geographers and travelers who wrote about Baalbek were as baffled by the Trilithon stones as modern visitors. They could not explain them. They attributed them to supernatural forces, to giants, to King Solomon, who was said in Islamic tradition to have commanded the jinn, the spirits of the air, and to have used their power to move stones that no mortal force could shift. The Arabic name for the complex, Kalat Baalbek, the citadel of Baalbek, reflected its medieval function as a fortress, but the legends that surrounded it reflected something older, a sense that the stones were not merely large but uncanny, that they belonged to a different order of creation, that they had been placed here by beings who were more than human. The Ottoman period, from the 16th to the early 20th century, brought a long stretch of relative neglect. The Ottomans were not unaware of Baalbek. They knew what it was, they knew what it had been, but they had neither the resources nor the inclination to preserve it. The temples crumbled, vegetation grew between the stones, earthquakes continued their slow demolition, local people scavenged building materials from the ruins, carrying away carved blocks to use in houses and walls and bridges. The process was gradual but relentless. Each year a little more was lost. Each year the ruins sank a little deeper into the earth. But even in their decay, even in their centuries of neglect, the temples retained their power to astonish. Every European traveler who came here during the Ottoman period left a record of amazement. They had seen the ruins of Rome, they had seen the Parthenon, they had visited the temples of Egypt, and yet Baalbek stopped them in their tracks. The scale was beyond anything they had encountered. The 6 columns of Jupiter were taller and more massive than anything in Rome. The foundation stones were heavier than anything in Egypt. The carved decoration of the temple of Bacchus was finer than anything in Greece. Baalbek was, in the words of one 18th century visitor, the most astonishing ruin in the world. And through it all, the 6 columns of Jupiter stood, unmoved, unshaken. They had become a landmark, a navigation point, a symbol of the valley itself. Travelers and merchants and armies marching through the Beqaa could see them from miles away, 6 golden pillars rising above the rooftops and the fortification walls, catching the sunlight, marking the spot where something extraordinary had once existed, and still existed, in fragments, in ruins. In 6 proud, stubborn, magnificent columns that refused to fall. European travelers began to visit Baalbek in the 16th and 17th centuries. They came from England and France and Germany and the Netherlands, drawn by ancient texts that described the temples, by rumors of colossal ruins in the Lebanese mountains. What they found astonished them. The first detailed account was written by Martin Baumgarten in 1508. He described the ruins with a mixture of awe and bafflement. He could not reconcile what he saw with his understanding of what was possible. The stones were too large. The columns were too tall. The workmanship was too fine. He struggled to believe that human hands had built it. Later travelers were more systematic. Robert Wood and James Dawkins visited in 1751 and produced a magnificent folio of engravings that introduced Baalbek to the European intellectual world. Their drawings showed the 6 columns of Jupiter in exquisite detail, the carved friezes of the temple of Bacchus, the tumbled drums and broken lintels scattered across the site. The images caused a sensation. Here was something that rivaled the Parthenon, something that arguably surpassed it, something that the classical world had built at the very edge of its reach. in a valley in Lebanon, far from Rome and Athens and the centers of classical civilization. The 19th century brought more visitors and more questions. Scholars debated the dating of the structures. They debated the purpose of the enormous foundation stones. They debated the methods of construction. They measured and drew and photographed and argued. Baalbek became a subject of passionate scholarly dispute, and it has remained one ever since. Mark Twain visited Baalbek in 1867 during the journey that would become the Innocents Abroad. He stood before the 6 columns of Jupiter and wrote with characteristic bluntness about their effect on him. He found them magnificent, bewildering, beyond the capacity of his American vocabulary to adequately describe. The Trilithon stones in particular defeated him. He could not comprehend how they had been moved. He could not imagine the force required. He left Baalbek with more questions than he had brought. And that, perhaps, is the appropriate response. Not answers but questions, not certainty but wonder. The appropriate response to Baalbek is not to solve it, but to stand before it and let it work upon you, to feel the weight of the stones in your imagination, to sense the depth of the history in your bones, to accept that some things are genuinely beyond comprehension. Not because they are supernatural, but because they are so far beyond our everyday experience that our minds simply cannot close around them. 800 tons, 20 meters, 2,000 years. The numbers are a kind of poetry. They describe something real, something physical and measurable and concrete, but they describe it in a language that the heart understands better than the head. You are settling deeper now. You can feel it, the way your thoughts are slowing, the way the edges of things are blurring. The boundary between the story and the silence is growing softer. The columns and the courtyards and the carved stone are becoming less distinct, less insistent, more dreamlike. They are drifting, you are drifting, and the drifting is gentle and warm and entirely without effort. Stay here, rest here. The story is almost done, but it is not done yet. There is a little more. A few more words to carry you forward, a few more stones to lay in the path that leads to sleep. The first systematic archaeological excavations at Baalbek were conducted by a German team between 1898 and 1905. Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany had visited the site during a tour of the Ottoman Empire and had been overwhelmed by what he saw. He ordered a full-scale archaeological expedition. The German team was large and well-funded. They cleared centuries of accumulated debris. They excavated the foundations. They documented every carved block and fallen column. They published their findings in enormous, lavishly illustrated volumes that remain essential references to this day. The German excavations revealed the full extent of the site for the first time. They uncovered the hexagonal court, which had been completely buried. They cleared the great court of the medieval buildings that had accumulated within it. They exposed the foundations of the Temple of Jupiter and documented the Trilithon stones. They mapped the quarry and measured the stone of the pregnant woman. For the first time, the world could see Baalbek as a complete complex. Not merely as 6 famous columns, but as an entire architectural landscape of courtyards and temples and platforms and walls, stretching across the hilltop, vast and intricate and breathtaking. After the German expedition, the site came under the care of French Mandate authorities and later the Lebanese Department of Antiquities. Conservation work continued throughout the 20th century. Fallen columns were stabilized, walls were consolidated, drainage systems were improved to protect the foundations from water damage. The work was careful and methodical, a slow, painstaking effort to preserve what remained, knowing that what had been lost could never be recovered. The excavations also revealed the full depth of the tell. Beneath the Roman foundations, beneath the Hellenistic layers, beneath the Phoenician remains, archaeologists found traces of habitation stretching back to the early Bronze Age. The tell was not merely a Roman site, it was not merely a Phoenician site, it was a continuously occupied settlement that had been lived in, worshipped at, built upon, and rebuilt for more than 9,000 years. The layers went down and down and down, each one containing the pottery and the tools and the foundations and the refuse of a different era, a different culture, a different understanding of the world. The deepest layers, the Neolithic layers, contained no temple remains, no monumental architecture, only the traces of a simple agricultural community, people who grew crops in the fertile valley soil, people who kept livestock, people who lived in small houses made of mud, brick, and thatch, people who looked at the mountains and the sky and the flat, abundant valley and felt something, a gratitude, a reverence, a sense that this place was special, that the earth here was generous in a way that earth elsewhere was not. And from that feeling, from that instinctive, pre-religious sense of the sacred, everything else followed. The Phoenician temples, the Greek altars, the Roman colossus, the Byzantine churches, the Islamic fortress, 9,000 years of human response to the same piece of ground, 9,000 years of building and rebuilding and building again. The impulse never changed. Only the gods and the architecture changed. The feeling that this place mattered, that it deserved the best that human hands could give, that feeling was constant, that feeling was eternal. And then came the wars. Lebanon's modern history has been violent. The country endured a devastating civil war from 1975 to 1990, 15 years of conflict that tore the nation apart. The Beqaa Valley, with its strategic position between Beirut and Damascus, was contested territory. Fighting reached Baalbek. The temples were damaged, not catastrophically, not the way the earthquakes had damaged them, but damaged nonetheless. Bullet holes in ancient stone. Shell impacts on walls that had survived for 2 millennia. The casual, indiscriminate destruction of modern warfare visited upon structures that had endured everything the ancient and medieval worlds could throw at them. The Baalbek International Festival, a celebrated music and arts festival that had been held among the ruins since 1956, was suspended during the war years. The festival had brought orchestras and ballet companies and opera singers and jazz musicians to perform in the Great Court and the Temple of Bacchus, the ancient stones serving as the most magnificent concert hall in the world. The acoustics, those remarkable acoustics, proved perfect for music. The Temple of Bacchus in particular, with its partially intact walls and its natural reverberation, was a performance space of extraordinary quality. The festival was resumed after the war ended, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence as peace returned to the valley. It continues today. The stages are erected in the same great court where bulls were once sacrificed to Jupiter. The audience sits beneath the same stars that the Roman priests watched. The music rises and fills the ancient enclosures, climbing the walls, echoing off the stone, finding its way through the same spaces that once channeled the smoke of burnt offerings and the chanting of worshippers. Music still fills these ancient stones. The sound of Beethoven and Fares and Ella Fitzgerald has echoed from walls that once heard the chanting of Roman priests and the bleating of sacrificial cattle. The stones do not discriminate. They accept all sounds. They hold all music. They are democratic in their resonance. In 1984, Baalbek was inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The designation recognized not only the architectural significance of the Roman temples, but also the extraordinary depth of human habitation at the site. The tell beneath the platform, the layers of civilization stretching back 9 millennia or more. The World Heritage inscription brought international attention and funding. Conservation efforts were intensified. Monitoring programs were established. The stones of Baalbek were placed under the protection not merely of Lebanon, but of humanity. The ongoing mystery of the foundation stones continues to generate scholarly debate and popular fascination. Mainstream archaeology generally attributes the entire complex, including the Trilithon, to the Romans, the tool marks, the construction sequence, the archaeological context, all point to Roman authorship. But a stubborn minority of researchers continue to ask whether the foundation platform might be older, whether the Romans built upon an existing structure, whether the massive stones at the base of the wall represent not the peak of Roman engineering, but the work of an earlier civilization whose capabilities we do not fully understand. The question matters not because the answer would change the physical reality of the stones, but because it speaks to something fundamental about human capability, about what our species has achieved, about what we have forgotten. The ancient world was not primitive. The builders of the pyramids, of Stonehenge, of the great megalithic structures found across the globe from Malta to Easter Island. These people possessed knowledge and skills that we are only beginning to appreciate. They could do things that we struggle to replicate with modern technology, not because they had superior tools or supernatural assistance, but because they had time, they had patience, they had an understanding of stone and leverage and coordinated human effort that has been largely lost in the age of powered machinery. Baalbek is a reminder of that lost knowledge. It stands as evidence that human beings, working with their bodies and their minds and the simplest of tools, can achieve things that seem impossible, that seem supernatural, that seem beyond the reach of mere flesh and bone. The stones are there, they are real, they weigh what they weigh, someone moved them, someone placed them, and that someone was human as you, as human as anyone who has ever lived or ever will. The miracle of Baalbek is not that gods built it. The miracle is that people did. The protection is ongoing. The challenges are many. Earthquakes remain a threat. Urban development around the site encroaches on the archaeological zone. Tourism brings both attention and damage. The stones are aging. They have been aging for 2,000 years. The limestone is slowly dissolving, molecule by molecule, in the rain that falls on the Beqaa Valley. The carved surfaces are softening. The fine details are blurring. The acanthus leaves on the capitals are losing their crispness. Time is patient. Time is thorough, and time has been working on these temples since the day they were built. But the stones are patient too, and they are tough. Limestone endures, it weathers slowly. The rate of dissolution in this climate is measured in fractions of a millimeter per century. The 6 columns of Jupiter will stand for centuries yet, perhaps millennia. They will outlast the nations that surround them. They will outlast the languages spoken in the valley. They will outlast the roads and the bridges and the buildings and the borders. They are playing the long game, and they are winning. Come back now to the columns. One last time. Come back to those 6 golden pillars standing against the sky. It is night now, full night. The sun has been gone for hours. The sky above the Beqaa Valley is immense and black and thick with stars. At this altitude, in this dry, clear air, far from the glow of Beirut on the other side of the mountains, the stars are magnificent. The Milky Way is a river of light, pouring across the heavens from horizon to horizon, so dense and so bright that it seems to have texture, depth, as though you could reach up and run your fingers through it like water. The 6 columns catch the starlight. They glow faintly in the darkness, not with reflected light. There is not enough ambient light for that. They glow with something else, something that might be heat, the residual warmth of the day releasing slowly from the stone, something that might be memory, the accumulated radiance of 2,000 years of sunlight absorbed and held and now given back, grain by grain, photon by photon, to the night. The air has cooled. The temperature drops quickly in the Beqaa Valley after sunset. The altitude, the dryness, the clear skies that allow the day's warmth to radiate upward and away. You feel the change on your skin, a freshness that was not there an hour ago, a crispness. The sweat that beaded on your forehead during the warm afternoon has evaporated. Your skin is cool and dry. The night air smells different from the day air, cleaner, more mineral, less floral. During the day, the valley is perfumed with jasmine and thyme and wild oregano. At night, those scents retreat, and what replaces them is simpler: stone, earth, the faintest trace of distant wood smoke from a village hearth, the smell of a landscape that has been human for 9,000 years and wild for 9 million more. You can hear the valley breathing. The Litani River, somewhere in the darkness to the south, murmurs over its stones. An owl calls from the ruins of the great court, a low, resonant hoot that reverberates between the ancient walls. Insects chirp in the grass that has grown between the fallen blocks. These small sounds do not break the silence. They are part of it. They are the texture of the silence, the grain and the weave of it, the evidence that silence is not empty but full. Not dead but alive, not the absence of the world but the world at rest. The ruins are different in the darkness. The shattered drums of the fallen columns, the tumbled blocks of the entablature, the broken walls and the empty niches and the roofless temples, all of these look different at night. In daylight they are ruins, evidence of destruction, reminders of what has been lost. But at night, when the details are hidden and only the shapes remain, they become something else. They become sculpture, abstract forms, arrangements of mass and shadow that have their own beauty. Independent of what they once were, the ruins are not merely the corpse of the temple. They are a second building, a building made of absence and shadow and starlight, a building that could only exist in the dark. Walk among them. The stone is warm beneath your feet. The day's heat radiates from every surface, from the paving stones of the great court, from the massive blocks of the retaining walls, from the fallen drums that lie on their sides like sleeping giants. The warmth rises around you like a bath. It envelops you. It comforts you. You are walking through stored sunlight, through 2,000 years of accumulated heat, through the memory of every day that has ever dawned over the Beqaa Valley. Compressed and concentrated and released now, slowly, gently, into the cool night air. The silence is extraordinary, not empty silence, full silence, the silence of a place that has absorbed 2 millennia of sound, of prayer and sacrifice and music and war and earthquake and the slow, patient work of rain on stone, and holds it all, the way the stone holds the heat, the way the earth holds the layers. Everything is stored here, everything is preserved. The silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of all sounds, layered and compressed and held in the stone, waiting. A nightjar calls from somewhere in the darkness beyond the ruins, a single sharp note, then silence, then the note again. It is a small sound in a vast space, a living sound in a place of stone. The bird does not know what these ruins are. It does not know that these columns were raised by an empire. It does not care about the weight of the Trilithon stones or the mystery of the quarry or the identity of the god who was worshipped here. The bird knows only that the warm stone is good for perching, that the crevices in the walls make good nesting sites, that the insects drawn to the sun-warmed surfaces make good food. The bird has made the ruins its own. It has claimed them the way nature always claims human things in the end, quietly, patiently, without ceremony or permission. Lizards sleep in the cracks between the blocks. Bats roost in the niches that once held statues. Wild plants grow from every joint and fracture, their roots slowly, imperceptibly, widening the gaps. Life has colonized these ruins the way faith once colonized them, layer upon layer, generation upon generation. The temples are not dead. They have simply changed tenants. The gods have left. The birds and the bats and the wild thyme have moved in, and the stones. The patient, enduring, ever-accommodating stones, accept them all, accept everyone, refuse no one. The temples of Baalbek are the most generous buildings in the world. They have housed gods and soldiers and worshippers and refugees and concerts and festivals and birds and bats and 10,000 summer sunsets. They turn nothing away. They judge nothing. They simply stand and let the world come to them. Lean against a fallen column drum. It lies on its side at the edge of the great court. One of the drums that fell during the earthquake of 1170 or 1202, or some unnamed tremor that the records did not survive to document. The drum is enormous, taller than you are when it lies on its side. A cylinder of stone, perfectly round, perfectly smooth, the fluting as crisp and deep as the day it was carved. 800 years on the ground, and it shows barely a scratch. It was built to stand for eternity. It simply happens to be lying down. Press your back against the curved surface. Feel the warmth. The stone has been absorbing sunlight all day, and it releases it now with the generosity of something that has more than it needs. The heat seeps through your clothes, through your skin, into your muscles and your bones. You are being warmed by the same sun that warmed the priests of Jupiter, the same sun that Helios drove across the sky in his golden chariot, the same sun that Baal commanded to shine upon the valley and make the crops grow. The sun is old, the stone is old, the warmth is old, and yet it feels new, it feels personal. It feels as though the stone is giving this heat specifically to you, a gift, an offering, a final, gentle, ancient courtesy from the builders who shaped this drum 2,000 years ago and could not have imagined that you would one day lean against it in the dark and feel its warmth and think of sleep. Stand beneath the 6 columns now. Look up. The columns rise above you into the darkness, their fluted surfaces faintly visible against the star-filled sky. The capitals are lost in shadow. The entablature is a dark line across the heavens, blocking a narrow band of stars. You are standing in a space that was once inside the greatest temple in the Roman world. The roof is gone. The walls are gone. The other 48 columns are gone. But these 6 remain, and the space they define is still sacred. Still powerful, still capable of making you feel small and awed and strangely comforted. Because the columns are not sad, they are not tragic remnants of a vanished glory. They are victorious. They have survived 2,000 years of earthquakes and wars and neglect and quarrying and the slow, relentless dissolution of rain. And they are still here, still standing, still vertical, still catching the light, whether it is the golden light of a Lebanese afternoon or the silver light of a midnight sky. They have won, they have beaten time, and standing beneath them, looking up at their impossible height. You feel something of that victory transfer to you, a sense that endurance is possible, that patience is rewarded, that the things that matter, the things that are beautiful and well-made and placed with care upon strong foundations, will last. The valley is asleep around you. The villages are dark. The vineyards and orchards are still. The Litani River moves through the valley floor with a quiet, unhurried murmur, carrying snowmelt from the mountains towards the sea. The anti-Lebanon range is a dark wall to the east, its peaks dusted with the last of the winter's snow, faintly luminous in the starlight. The Lebanon mountains are a dark wall to the west, hiding the Mediterranean beyond. The valley is cradled between them, sheltered, protected, held. And in the center of the valley, on its ancient tell, the ruins sleep too. The temple of Jupiter with its 6 standing columns, the temple of Bacchus with its miraculous walls, the tiny temple of Venus with its curved colonnade, the great court with its fallen altars, the hexagonal court with its buried secrets, the platform with its impossible foundation stones, the Trilithon, 3 blocks of 800 tons each, resting in the wall as they have rested for millennia, bearing the weight of everything above them, bearing it without complaint, without strain, without any sign that they will ever move again. And in the quarry, 800 meters to the south, the stone of the pregnant woman lies where she has always lain, still attached to the bedrock, still waiting, still patient. 1,000 tons of unfinished business, a question that will never be answered, a stone that will never reach its destination. And perhaps that is part of her beauty, that she never arrived, that she remains in the quarry, in the place of potential, in the state of becoming. She is not a failure, she is a promise, an intention. A gesture towards something so vast and so ambitious that even the builders of Baalbek, the people who moved 800-ton stones and raised 20-meter columns and built the largest temple in the Roman world, even they could not quite bring themselves to finish it. Beside her, the stone of the south sleeps too, even larger, even heavier, 1,650 tons of dreams, a stone so large that the mind cannot hold it, a stone that would dwarf a blue whale, that would crush a locomotive, that would break any crane ever built by modern engineering if anyone tried to lift it, and it lies here, in the same quarry, under the same stars, sleeping the same deep mineral sleep that it has slept since the day the quarrymen set down their tools and walked away. What were they thinking, those quarrymen, on the last day of work? Did they know they were leaving forever? Did they understand that the stone they had spent months cutting from the bedrock would never reach its destination? Or did they believe they would return tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that, until the stone was free and moving and on its way to the temple? Perhaps the project was simply suspended, a change of plan, a reallocation of resources. Perhaps the emperor who had commissioned the stone died or was deposed, and his successor had different priorities. Perhaps the engineers looked at the stone and the distance and the gradient and did the calculations one more time and quietly concluded that it could not be done, that the stone of the pregnant woman and the stone of the south would remain where they were, not because anyone wanted them to stay, but because the physics of the situation would not let them leave. There is comfort in that, in the idea that even the greatest builders left something undone. Even the most ambitious projects have their limits. Even the most determined hands eventually set down their tools and walk away, not in defeat, not in frustration, but in the simple human acknowledgement that some things are beyond completion. Some things are meant to be begun but not finished, started but not ended. The quarry stone is not a monument to failure. It is a monument to aspiration, to the human desire to do more, to reach further, to build bigger, even when the body and the budget and the physics of the material world say no. You are very quiet now. The story has done its work. The warm night air of the Beqaa Valley has done its work. The slow accumulation of stone and history and starlight has built something inside you, a structure of calm, a temple of rest, as solid and as patient as the ruins themselves. You do not need to hold on to any of this, not the names, not the dates, not the measurements, not the mysteries. Let them go. Let them dissolve into the darkness the way the incense smoke dissolved into the air of the ancient temples, rising and thinning and spreading until it became indistinguishable from the atmosphere itself. What remains is simpler, warmer, more fundamental, the feeling of stone beneath your feet, the warmth of ancient walls releasing the heat of the day, the starlight falling on honey-colored columns, the silence of a valley that has been inhabited for 9,000 years, the weight of your body on the mattress, the softness of the pillow, the slow, steady, faithful rhythm of your breathing. You are drifting now, you can feel it, the way the world is growing softer, the way the edges of things are dissolving, the boundary between here and there, between now and then, between you and the story, is thinning, becoming transparent, becoming gossamer. Soon it will be gone entirely, and you will be in that other place, that deeper place, the place where sleep lives. Let it come, do not reach for it, do not chase it, just lie here, in the warm darkness, in the starlight, in the silence of the ancient stones, and let it find you. It knows where you are, it always knows. The 6 columns stand in the darkness, patient, warm, permanent. They have been standing for 2,000 years. They will stand for 2,000 more. They do not waver, they do not falter. They simply are vertical, solid, true, and in their steadfastness, in their calm, unshakable refusal to fall, there is a message, a lullaby, a whispered promise that some things endure, that some things last, that the foundations can be trusted, that the ground beneath you is solid, that you are held. The stone of the pregnant woman sleeps in her quarry, 1,000 tons of limestone dreaming of a wall she will never join, 1,000 tons of potential, 1,000 tons of rest. She has been sleeping for 2,000 years. She is good at it. She is patient. She does not hurry. She does not worry. She simply lies in the earth, in the warm, red earth of the Beqaa Valley, and she sleeps. Sleep like the stone, heavy and warm and still. Sleep like the valley, broad and deep and cradled between mountains. Sleep like the columns, upright in their dreams, vertical even in slumber, standing even in the dark. The stars are turning above the Beqaa Valley, slowly, imperceptibly, the great wheel of the heavens rotating around the pole star, the same rotation that the priests of Jupiter watched from the steps of their temple, the same rotation that the Phoenician worshippers of Baal watched from their shrine on the Tell, the same rotation that the Neolithic farmers watched as they tilled the valley floor 9,000 years ago. The stars do not change. The stars do not hurry. The stars have all the time in the world. And so do you, tonight here, in this warm darkness, in this deep and gathering silence. You have all the time in the world, no alarms to set, no deadlines to meet, no tasks to complete, just this moment, just this breath, just this slow, sweet, inevitable descent into the deep and dreamless dark. Sleep now. Sleep the way the temples sleep, massive and still and utterly at peace. Sleep the way the valley sleeps, broad and dark and held between mountains. Sleep the way the Trilithon sleeps, 800 tons of stone bearing the weight of the world without effort, without strain, without a tremor. Sleep the way the stone of the pregnant woman sleeps, dreaming in the quarry, dreaming of temples that were never built, dreaming of journeys that were never taken, dreaming the long, warm, patient dreams of stone. The night wind moves through the ruins. It enters from the west, from the direction of the Mediterranean beyond the mountains, and it threads its way between the standing columns with a low, soft, almost musical sound. It is the sound of breath passing through a stone flute, the sound of air finding its way through spaces that were designed for gods. The columns and the walls and the courtyards and the trenches of Baalbek form a vast stone instrument, and the wind plays it night after night. Year after year, century after century, it is the lullaby of the temple. It is the song the stones sing to themselves when they think no one is listening. But you are listening. You are here, lying in your bed, warm and still and heavy with approaching sleep, and the wind's song reaches you across the distance, across the kilometers and the mountains and the impossible gap between there and here, and it wraps around you, and it holds you, and it carries you down. Down into the deep, down into the dark, down into the warm, still, silent place where sleep has been waiting for you all along. The columns stand guard, the valley holds its breath, the stars turn their slow wheel in the heavens, the stone keeps its secrets, and you rest, deep and warm and safe, held by the earth, cradled by the night, lulled by the oldest lullaby in the world, the sound of wind through ancient stone, the sound of time passing gently over things that endure. In and out, in and out, like the breath of a valley, like the wind through a colonnade, like the slow, unhurried, eternal rhythm of stone being shaped by hands that loved what they were making. Sleep, good night, and let the colossal temples of the sun keep watch over your dreaming.